Congress here in Palm Beach County. And this again, I have Lawrence, this time I'm going to get, you're right, Lawrence Milstein, who is the Regional Director of AJC in Palm Beach County, and I have Rabbi New, a rabbi here from East Boca. And as we all look to celebrate Thanksgiving with our loved ones, we want to talk about the 200 plus families in Israel who are living in sheer terror because they do not know whether their loved ones who were kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th are alive or what condition they're living in. Each of us have met with hostage families over the past weeks, and the message has been pretty clear, and that is, please keep the hostage in front of the American people and the world, so that they are not forgotten and so that they can be returned safely. I'm going to tell you the story today of Abigail, age 3. There's her photo. I met last week in my office, or 2 weeks ago, with her aunts. You'll see that photo. And they told me about Abigail. Abigail lived in a small kibbutz, about 400 people, less than 2 miles from Gaza. She lived there with her mom, her father, and her 2 brothers and sisters. On October 7th, about 70 Hamas invaded this particular kibbutz, murdering about 20 people and maiming others. Some are still, they don't know where they are. They took many hostages, including Abigail. On that particular day, her father, who was a news reporter, went out to photograph Hamas as they were parachuting into the kibbutz. Abigail ran out with him, and when they went to return home, they saw their 2 other children ran out and said their mother had been shot and killed. At that point, Hamas shot Abigail's father. The 2 siblings ran back into their house, and Abigail ran to a neighbor's house. That's when the horror continued. Abigail was snatched or kidnapped and taken with that other family to places we do not know. The 2 other children hid in that cupboard, if you can see that photograph, for 14 hours. The bloody cloth you see there was where their mother laid in blood, dead. And since that time, there's not been a word to know whether Abigail is alive or what condition she's in. Just to correct on this kibbutz, because thinking about what these hostages are coming back to, in this particular kibbutz, 52 were killed and 20 are missing. So we're here to say, really bring back the hostages. We want that foremost, and we are hopeful on Thanksgiving that some or most will be released. And I'm going to bring Larry up.
Thank you so much, Congressman Frankel, for including me, and thank all of you for being here. Whew. One of the many revelations from this war is just how closely linked the Palm Beach Jewish community is with Israel. It's really hard to find a Jewish person here in Palm Beach County who doesn't have some connection, an acquaintance, a friend, or a family member that lives in Israel. And so for many of us, we've been personally affected by the war. Many of us have visited the kibbutzim and the towns that was so savagely attacked by Hamas on October 7th, and from where many of the hostages were taken. Because of those connections, we feel the pain and the outrage quite deeply and personally, especially the plight of the hostages. However, one need not have a personal connection to rally for the hostages, as Lois said. This is an issue of humanity. Calls for their immediate release should be self-evident, universal, for all people of good conscience. Innocent civilians were violently snatched away from their families on a peaceful Saturday morning. Approximately 240 men, women, children, grandmothers, infants, babies were forcibly ripped away from their families and into the tunnels of Gaza. The youngest one kidnapped is Kfir Bibas, a 9-month-old baby boy that was just beginning to crawl when he was ripped away. He, his parents, and his older 4-year-old brother were snatched away and haven't been heard from since then. Support for the hostages is really support for civilization over barbarism, for human decency over inhumanity. Where is the moral outrage and the widespread demands for those calling for the immediate release of the hostages? Where are the calls for humanitarian aid for the hostages, for visits by the International Red Cross? Instead, we've seen despicable scenes, the tearing down of hostage posters. Let's remember, Hamas didn't discriminate when it came to taking the hostages. In addition to Israelis, they grabbed citizens of nearly 30 other countries, including the United States. In the end, it really doesn't matter where the hostages were from. Without any provocation, they were violently seized, they are being held illegally, and they must come home now. AJC has been working with families of the hostages to help facilitate meetings with members of Congress, with the Senate, with diplomats at the United Nations. Their heartbreaking stories must be heard. We must understand what these families are going through, and we must keep the calls for their release front and center. So, as we prepare to celebrate the joy of Thanksgiving with our families, being together with our loved ones, yes, we mourn the loss of all civilian life in Israel and even in Gaza, innocent civilian lives. But we must remember the pain and the uncertainty that these hostage families are dealing with now, who continue to have empty chairs at their dinner tables. So let us all pray for the safe return of the hostages and do everything we can to bring them home now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Rabbi?
Good morning, and thank you for convening this. I was privileged to be a part of a group of 28 rabbis from across the United States, Canada, and even Australia to travel to Israel 2.5 weeks ago on a mission that we dubbed as being ambassadors of love, to let the people of Israel know that they're not in this alone, that we understand that whilst they are on the front lines of this battle, they are representing not only the land of Israel or the people of Israel, but all people of good faith, all people of good moral standing. On the first day that we were there, we met with the families of the hostages who had organically come together and created a command center in Tel Aviv. And we've heard about the living nightmare that they're all in. But I'd like to point out something else. One of the fathers of the hostages got up at our meeting and said that the families were confronted with two choices here. One, to collapse under the weight of this endless nightmare. Or alternatively, to galvanize themselves and to channel this nightmare and all of this angst and all of this trauma into action. And he said, that's our choice. That's our choice. We chose the latter. And so we all came back from Israel, charged with a mission by them to be ambassadors, to keep this story front and center of the consciousness of all people. And I think it's so very important that you have this picture of Abigail and that you shared this story. One of the problems when you start talking about hostages, it becomes like this generic term, the hostages. And that's why it's so important that these pictures are up, because every single person is a human being, a whole life, is a child, is a daughter, is a son, is a brother, is a sister, is a father, is a grandmother, is a grandfather. These are people just like you and I. Unfortunately, tragically, as a Jewish people, hostage taking is nothing new for us. In fact, the very first Jew, Abraham, confronted a hostage-taking situation in which his nephew, Lot, was taken hostage, and he left no stone unturned to secure his freedom. In fact, all the early cases in the Bible of hostage-taking were all individuals. And the Bible sending us a message. One life is a world. To save one life is a world. In Jewish law, there is no higher priority than saving someone from captivity. So as Americans gather this Thursday around the Thanksgiving tables and offer thanks to God and to the founding fathers of this country for the freedoms that we enjoy, I urge Americans to have a conversation about the sanctity of life, about the importance of life. This is really an existential moment for people all over the world to examine our value system, what we really stand for, whose side are we truly on. And I know that we are all on the side of life and of liberty. And I hope that the prayers of all Americans this Thanksgiving are heard on high, and we see the safe release of the hostages imminently. Thank you.
Let's take a photo with this. So let's bring back Abigail and all the hostages, and I think as a grandmother what she's going to be coming back to. Both her parents were murdered. But hopefully she will live. Thank you, everybody.